effect that has if you say a doctor can't perform an abortion? Would you criminalize it?
Sure.
Would you put people in jail? If it's murder as you see it, would you criminalize it?
Well, the first effect on human life is that it would preserve human life, especially the life of the unborn child.
How would it work? I don't know. That's one of the questions I have. How would it work if you outlawed it?
Sure. Well, again, I think it would depend on the specific piece of legislation that was crafted, and I'm not in a position, I wouldn't even pretend to be in a position to do that. But
well, that's what you're doing here. You're saying that Congressman Kennedy has voted wrong. Tell me how he should have voted. Should he vote to outlaw or criminalize abortion? If you say the doctor can't perform an abortion, then somebody else might do it, or they might leave the country to have an abortion, or they might do it illegally. Some midwife could do it, or somebody who flunked out of med school could do it. Unless you outlaw it, unless you outlaw getting an abortion, I just wonder if you're really preventing it in any way. I mean, what would be the penalty for a woman getting an abortion in the world that you would like to construct here? What would be the penalty for a woman or a girl getting an abortion?
I have no idea what the penalty would be because I'm not a legislator.
Well, you're talking about but you're telling Congress people how to vote and what laws to pass. What laws should be passed on abortion? Yes, you. Oh, go ahead. Good.
No, what we're trying to do is say to Catholics.
I think you're getting into law here, and you don't like Congressman Kennedy's voting record in Congress. That's what you're really going after, where he stands on the law. A lot of Catholics agree or disagree in every poll I've seen about what the law should be. They generally accept the teaching authority of the church, the Magister, your teaching authority, Your Excellency. Where the disagreement is what the law should be, what the penalty should be. I've never heard of anybody in the church, in the laity, or in the clergy, or in the hierarchy saying a woman should be put in prison for having an abortion. And then I said, well, wait a minute, if you think it's murder, there's an inconsistency here. And if there's a hesitancy to punish a woman for having an abortion, maybe that's instructive to you, sir, Your Excellency, because when you realize you don't really want to punish a woman for having an abortion under the law, then maybe you should step back from using the law as your tool in enforcing moral authority. Maybe your moral authority comes from the pulpit and teaching, and a congressman has a totally different role, which is to write the law. Now, I've asked you 3 times, Your Excellency, to tell me what the law should be, and if you can't do it, maybe you shouldn't be involved in telling Congressman Kennedy how to write the law. You say you don't know how to do it. Well, you ought to try before you tell him what he's doing wrong. That's my thinking. Because when it comes to the law, that's a secular question. It has not to do with the morality. We do a lot of things in this country we don't like and we think are immoral. But the question is, what sanction do you apply to it? And I'm asking you again with respect, because you are here on the show of your own free will at our request. What should be the penalty for a young woman or a girl even to have an abortion? And if there's no penalty for it, are you really outlawing it?
Sure, and there can perhaps be different degrees of penalties depending on the involvement of the person. There might be some penalty for the woman having the abortion. There might be some penalty for the doctor performing.
No, let's get to the
woman.
idea,
and that's not my...
Well, you have no idea, and it's not your area, and yet this is the very area you've transgressed in. You've gone into the area of lawmaking and condemned the behavior of public officials who have to write public policy. And I go back to what John Kennedy said when he was under pressure to explain the separation of church and state, the difference between rendering unto Caesar the things that are Caesar, which is the law, and rendering to your flock and to people like me what is right and wrong. And I would contest that your problem is you haven't gotten people to obey your moral code through teaching, and you've resorted now to use the law to do your enforcement for you. And the problem with that is you are hesitant, even here, Your Excellency, to state for me now what the punishment should be under the law. State for me now what the punishment should be under the law for having an abortion, because you know deep down if you said 1 minute in prison you'd be laughed at, because the American people, Catholic and non-Catholic, do not think it's a criminal act to have an abortion. They may not like it, they may think it's immoral, but they don't think it's criminal. And yet you are here bringing the force of the law, the authority of the police and the bench, the law, the judiciary. You want to bring it all to bear, including the Constitution, to enforce your moral beliefs, which are very valid, and I happen to share them. But how do you do it under the law, Your Excellency? And I'll give you plenty of time to do this. How do you do it under the law?
Thank you, and I appreciate appreciate the time to try to explain it. I think it's not unusual, and you would understand this, I think, to have the moral law reflected in the laws of the land. We do that all the time when we say that you may not kill somebody, you may not steal something, you may not beat somebody up. It's not at all unusual to have the moral law reflected in the laws of the land. Now, exactly how that is played out, that's not the job of the church, much as we're involved in the question of health care. We're trying to establish some very basic principles about health care. We're not involved in the great details of a 2,000-page piece of legislation. And the same approach would be taken perhaps to abortion. We believe that abortion is wrong. It's a matter of the natural law, and our legislation often reflects principles of the natural law. I'm not a legislator. I can't begin to write those laws. My job is to try to promote the truth of the moral law and to encourage members of my church who freely choose to be Catholic to follow the dictates of their faith.
I express that, Your Excellency. Thank you for coming on. I believe you expressed the hesitancy of the clergy to intervene in terms of what the sanction should be. Words like murder and killing are used in the case of abortion, but they do not seem to apply in terms of writing the law, and you've made that very clear. And I would urge you to consider the possibility of error here, because in getting into telling public officials how to set public policy, you're stepping beyond moral teaching, and you're basically assuming an authority, which I don't think is yours. Anyway, thank you very much,
Well,
Your
obviously,
Excellency,
we will disagree on that point.
about the authority of the church, and I do believe that Jesus had it right when he said, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar. And as you admitted tonight on 5 occasions, you don't know how to write law. And writing law is very tricky in a secular society in which you and I live, even with our moral conduct, I hope, acceptable to God. Thank you.
Well, I will reflect on that if you reflect on the teachings of the church.
Thank you, sir, very much, Your Excellency.